Hi, welcome back to the Speakerstack music channel. In this video we're going to continue looking at how I created a techno rock song in Ableton. This is video 9 and it's going to focus on 3 sequencer sounds that we've got in the track, and these sequencer sounds are on instrument channels 13, 14, 15 and 16. So although there's 4 channels there, we've actually only got 3 sequencer sounds. The first 2 channels are dedicated to a Cthulhu arpeggiator sequencer that I've got going on, and then we've got a second sequencer on channel 15 and a third sequencer on channel 16. So I'm going to dive into the Cthulhu arpeggiated sequencer first of all, and I will post a video link at the end of this video to a longer tutorial in terms of how you can use Cthulhu. What we've got here is Cthulhu set up on channel 12, which if you click on, channel 13, which if you click on, it will then bring up Cthulhu, and I've just got the arpeggiator setting on that. I've got a very limited sequencer pattern here by clicking on pattern G here and silver arps, and that's just literally bringing up that pattern there in terms of the arpeggiator section for Cthulhu. Then I've got Cthulhu running into a analog synthesizer that I've created in Ableton, and this is what you have to do with Cthulhu because it's an instrument in its own right. So if you actually want to then push the instrument of Cthulhu through a particular sound, you have to actually link it up to a second MIDI track. So if I just show you how I've done that on channel 14, to scroll across, you'll see that you have to mute the Cthulhu track, which is on instrument track 13, which is muted, and then arm the channel that you're wanting to create the sound for Cthulhu on, which is I've got as channel 14. Arm that with a record button here, and then you have to click on the actual instrument channel that you want to link it to in the MIDI from, which we've got the glitchy sequencer channel, which is 13 there, and just tell it that you want it to come from Cthulhu. So you click on that there, and that essentially then pushes the arpeggiated pattern that you've got from Cthulhu into a particular sound that you've set up on channel 14. In terms of the actual pattern for the sequencer, it's very simple. I've just got a series of notes on G with a slight variation up to A in the pattern, and I'll just play you how that sounds. So I'm very much just trying to create texture with that sequencer pattern and build up the texture of the song rather than have it as a dominating sound in the mix. So then in terms of how I've actually created it, I've used an analog instrument from the Ableton instrument suite, which you can find in instruments and then go to analog, and I've dragged in the template rather than one of these preset instruments here. So I've literally just clicked and dragged onto it. I've created a saw wave, which you can find by clicking on this here. I've kind of played around with the frequency and resonance to create the sound. And in terms of the actual pattern of the synthesizer, I've got a very, very kind of prominent high attack at 5 milliseconds, a little bit more decay on it, not too much sustain because I want the notes to be kind of quite clear and not actually sustaining. And then finally, the release, again, a moderate amount of release. I've got 263 milliseconds, and you can actually click on these sections and type in what you want to put in, or you can just move these parameters around. As you can see, if you drag that across, you reduce the speed of the attack. And again, you can do the same for decay. And then if you move it up, you change the sustain. And then if you move this section along here, you change the release. On top of that, I'm just going to flip all of that back to how it was. I think that's it. Yeah. So in terms of the other effects I've got on this, I've got an EQ8, which I've got a high pass low cut filter at 100 hertz. I've got a high cut low pass filter at just over 10,000 hertz, and I've got a dip in the decibels at around 1,000 hertz. I've also added in a compressor to boost the sound, and I've also got a grain delay effect on that, which you can also find by dropping in this from the audio effects. So all of these things are in the audio effects channel. I've got a chorus, and that's essentially how I've set it up. And it's really just a case of playing around with the parameters on these devices to get the kind of sound you want. So that's the glitchy sequencer. Then I've also got a series of sequencer notes. This is the second sequencer. If I just play that. So this second sequencer is a more of a kind of a dance, big dance sound, if you like, within the mix. And I've wanted to bring this in as a means to build up the tension within the song before it breaks into the actual sections of the track where it just kicks off. So I've got it coming in a little bit here, and then really just coming in the build up here. So it's used as an instrument to build tension before you get that release of dropping into the beat, etc. For that, I've used an Ableton Analogue instrument, and again a sawtooth, and again, very quick attack, a little bit of delay, not much sustain because I want the notes to be quite clear, and then a moderate amount of release on that. I haven't messed around with the octave or detuned it or anything like that, but I have played around with the frequency and the resonance, and that's essentially it. On top of that, with the instrument channel, with the analog instrument effect, I've also put in an EQ8, again high pass low cut filter at 100 hertz, less of a dramatic cutoff in terms of the higher end of the frequencies, and just boosted the signal a little bit in terms of the decibels, just for that to cut through in the mix. And then a chorus, again, just to give it that kind of unison effect, a bit of delay on it, and then finally quite a lot of reverb just to push it back in terms of the ambience in the mix. And then finally, the third sequencer, if I just play you that. And just wait for the next section to come up. So yeah, this was, again, it's just something to add texture to it, and it was dropped in really with the video in mind for the song, which has a kind of mechanical spider on it, and I wanted to just get that kind of spider effect coming in there. It's slightly off key just to create a bit of tension, and yeah, if I just play you. So there is actually a section at the start where it brings in some melody, but then if you come to this section here, it's very much used to create just a bit of discord and tension in the song by having something slightly off key in that section. For this, again, I've used an analog instrument, again, quite a high attack speed on it, a bit more decay and sustain on this track. And then a lot of release actually on that, so that it just kind of rings through as a sound. Dropped in an EQ8, boosted the decibels around 100 hertz, saturator just to boost the signal, and a reverb again just to push it back in the mix, set it around 62%. And that's the third sequencer. So first one is using Cthulhu, second one is using Ableton's Analogue instrument, which should come with Ableton Suite. I hope you found that useful and of value. If you did, please like the video and consider subscribing to the channel, and hopefully see you in the next Speakerstack video.